The sky was clear when the killing began. Within minutes, thousands of men realized they were walking straight into death from above. It was the spring of 1945, and the German front in Italy was collapsing. The war that had once stretched across continents was shrinking, tightening like a noose around the Third Reich. German commanders were running out of fuel, ammunition, and options. Yet orders still came down from Berlin: hold the line, no retreat, fight to the last man. Among those trapped between orders and reality was General Leo Gehr von Schweppenberg, a veteran officer shaped by decades of war. He had seen tanks roll across Europe and believed deeply in discipline, structure, and movement. But now, movement itself had become deadly. The Allies had mastered the sky. In northern Italy, German forces were attempting a desperate repositioning. Units were being shifted along exposed roads, trying to avoid encirclement. Convoys stretched for miles, trucks loaded with soldiers, artillery pieces dragged by exhausted vehicles, columns of men marching through narrow valleys. To the generals, it was a necessary gamble. To Allied pilots hunting above, it was a perfect target. At first, the man on the ground heard only distant engines. Many ignored them. By 1945, aircraft were constant companions to every battlefield. But then the sound grew louder, faster, sharper. The sky filled with the metallic scream of approaching fighters. The first attack came without warning. Rockets tore into the lead vehicles, fireballs erupted across the road, trucks flipped, ammunition detonated, and men scattered into nearby fields. Machine gun fire stitched across the earth with terrifying precision. Soldiers who had survived years of war were cut down in seconds. Panic spread instantly. Drivers abandoned vehicles. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Some screamed to push forward. Others ordered men to take cover. But there was nowhere to hide. The road itself had become a kill zone. Above, Allied fighter bombers circled like predators. They had air superiority so complete that these attacks felt almost routine. Pilots descended again and again, choosing targets at will. Fuel trucks, artillery positions, clusters of soldiers trying to regroup. For General Gehr and his staff, the attack was a brutal confirmation of a truth many German commanders already understood. The battlefield no longer belonged to the army on the ground. It belonged to whoever controlled the sky. Reports flooded in. Entire units were disappearing before they even reached the front. Communication lines broke down. Vehicles clogged the roads, burning wrecks blocking every escape route. The careful plans drafted in command rooms dissolved under relentless airstrikes. Gehr attempted to restore order. He ordered dispersal, smaller movements, travel by night. But time was against him. Allied forces were advancing rapidly, and every delay tightened the trap around his men. Then came another wave. The sound alone was enough to freeze soldiers in place. The roar of engines diving low, followed by explosions that seemed to tear the earth open. Dust and smoke covered everything. Men stumbled blindly through burning debris. Horses pulling artillery collapsed in flames. Medical teams were hit before they could reach the wounded. The psychological effect was devastating. Veterans who had endured artillery barrages and tank battles spoke later of the helplessness they felt under air attack. You could fight another soldier. You could even survive shelling by luck. But aircraft came from anywhere, anytime, and vanished before you could respond. Even hardened officers began to realize the truth they dared not say aloud. The war was lost. Gehr's catastrophic encounter with Allied air power was not a single explosion or one dramatic duel. It was something worse, the slow destruction of command itself. Every attempt to maneuver ended in disaster. Every road became a target. Strategy collapsed under the weight of constant aerial surveillance and firepower. As the attacks continued, columns broke apart into isolated groups. Soldiers hid in forests, moving only at night, abandoning heavy equipment to survive. Tanks were left behind because there was no fuel. Guns were spiked and deserted. The once formidable German military machine was dissolving into fragments. And still, orders from higher command demanded resistance. In one particularly devastating strike, a concentration of vehicles gathered near a village was spotted from the air. Within minutes, rockets and bombs turned the area into a blazing inferno. Survivors described the ground shaking, the air filled with shrapnel and screams. Smoke rose so high it could be seen for miles. For General Gare, each report arriving at headquarters felt like another piece of reality collapsing. He had been trained for maneuver warfare, fast armored breakthroughs, coordinated movements, calculated risks. None of it mattered now. The enemy didn't need to outmaneuver him. They simply hunted him from above. The Allies understood this power deeply. Air supremacy was no longer just support for ground troops. It was the decisive weapon itself. Roads, bridges, supply lines, everything that kept an army alive could be destroyed within minutes. The days that followed were filled with retreat disguised as repositioning. German formations moved cautiously, often too slowly to escape. Pilots patrolling overhead watched for the smallest sign of activity. Dust clouds on roads, reflections from metal, even shadows moving across fields. Every sighting meant another attack. The cumulative effect was catastrophic. Units arrived at the front reduced to a fraction of their strength. Supplies never reached their destination. Morale collapsed. Soldiers whispered about surrender, though officers warned that talk like that bordered on treason. For many, survival became the only objective. As the front crumbled, Gare faced a reality that countless commanders throughout history had feared. No amount of experience could adapt quickly enough to a battlefield that had fundamentally changed. The age of massed movements under open skies was over. Eventually, the German lines in Italy broke entirely. Allied forces pushed forward, and the remnants of the defending troops retreated or surrendered. The destruction inflicted from the air did what artillery and tanks alone could not. It shattered coordination, confidence, and the will to continue. When the war ended weeks later, stories from survivors painted the same picture again and again. The sky itself had been the enemy. Men remembered the sound of engines more vividly than gunfire. They remembered burning roads and endless fear. General Leo Gare's catastrophic encounter with Allied air power became one of many examples of how World War II transformed modern warfare. Armies that once dominated through discipline and armor found themselves powerless beneath relentless aircraft. It was not only a military defeat, it was a psychological one. A generation of officers realized they were fighting a war whose rules had changed faster than they could adapt. In the silence that followed the war, the wrecked vehicles along those Italian roads rusted under the sun. Nature slowly reclaimed the craters, but the lesson remained clear to everyone who studied the conflict afterwards. Control the sky, and you control the battlefield. For the men caught below that spring, there was no strategy left, no heroic last stand, only the desperate hope that the next sound overhead would pass them by. And that, perhaps, was the true catastrophe. Not just the destruction of an army, but the moment soldiers understood that courage alone could no longer protect them from the future of war.